What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we're going to be breaking down the best and worst performances of college football in week number 11. If you are new, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. I do content like this every single week and content damn near every single day. Let's get into this because we're going to have the all-stars of the week, the stars of the week, and then, of course, we'll talk about the kind of duds of the week. So let's start out with the highest of the high. Ashton Jeanty technically didn't earn the pink star, but this dude's been on the list every single week, damn near, for the entire year. So, fuck it. He's going to be the one who doesn't have... Like, I have this specifically for guys who stay on the all-stars of the week. Who cares? This guy is a superstar, all right? He's not even an all-star. He is the star. And this past week, 34 carries, 208 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did have a fumble, but it's his first fumble on the year, which is fine with me. 7 missed tackles forced, 2 completions on 2 targets for 12 yards as well. This guy's just been an absolute machine. Been saying he's going top 10 this whole time. I'm going to continue taking him top 5. Just simply put, the NFL values a player like this extremely. You look at what Saquon Barkley's doing in Philadelphia as well. It's risk mitigation for quarterbacks where right now, especially in a draft like this, especially with the quarterbacks that, might be having some deficiencies, people don't really love the way Dak Prescott is playing. We're going to see a lot of risk mitigation with Ashton Jeanty there and boosting that run game. If you can rely on your run game, it takes a lot of stress off your QB, and it lowers the value of what your quarterback can do in terms of both the positive and negative side of things. And when the attention's on the running back, it allows guys like CeeDee Lamb to have a lot less attention on them. I certainly do believe that a team like the Cowboys, a team like the Browns, that the fan base isn't really happy, but the fan base is also stuck with their quarterback situation, would be the best spot for him to go. Then we got Jihad Campbell. This dude's been on this list quite a few times as well. He had an 83 defensive grade this past week with 4 pressures, 8 defensive stops. He was targeted 3 times, allowed 1 reception, not even for a positive yard, but a negative yard, and had a pass breakup. Excellent performance for Jihad Campbell, who he's had some high highs, he's had some low lows, but regardless, at 6'3", 244, this guy's been an absolute stud. Next, we got Kyle Lewis. Is it Kyle Louis? I'm not 100% sure. I didn't get to really see him pop off in person because I wasn't necessarily focused on Pitt's defense when I got to see him at SMU. But this past week, he had an 87 defensive grade, by far the highest on his team. He had 6 pressures, 5 defensive stops, was targeted 3 times as well, and allowed 2 receptions for only 9 yards and had an interception. Fantastic performance. He has only played 2 years. I believe that he is a redshirt sophomore, based on the fact that it says 2026 is his draft eligible year. But, regardless, I doubt that he's going to be coming out this year. A lot of guys in his similar boat that have had some success. I don't really necessarily believe that he is going to be coming out too early. Next, we have CJ West. Last week, we had Mikhail Kamara. Funny enough, he's still on this list. I almost included him here instead, but I had to give credit to someone who performed even better than Mikhail and CJ West, the nose tackle from Indiana. He's not really built solely like a nose tackle. I mean, 6'2", 317 can absolutely be classified as one, but I think this guy is going to be certainly flexible versus Michigan. So it's funny that I'm actually putting my dream destination as the former coach of Michigan. Versus Michigan, he had 7 pressures and 5 defensive stops from the defensive interior. Walter Nolan, is that you in like a body with an extra additional 12 pounds? No, it's CJ freaking West, and that's a fantastic performance by him. This is his draft eligible year in a draft where we kind of do lose a little bit of the allure and the shininess, and especially in terms of the build for that day 2 to day 3 area of defensive interior. It's good to see that talents like CJ West are starting to take hold to where teams that are looking for a little bit of beef on the interior while not having to pay a premium price can actually be able to have some hope at being able to snipe one down the board. Of course, again, we'll study CJ West now that he has come onto the scene. This is an absolutely massive game for him, and I'm very excited to see where this takes us. Then we have Carson Schwezinger, and first off, this guy's been on my up list a couple times now. Versus Minnesota, he had a really good game, and I like to look at these guys' Instagram profiles to be able to get some of these photos. So I believe this is not one from his Instagram profile, but I realized some people I knew followed him. And I'm like, that's interesting. I mean, like, they didn't go to UCLA. Turns out Carson actually went to my high school. And I think he was the grade below me or 2 grades below. So that's actually really cool. Cool small story right there. Carson Schweizinger, he is draft eligible this year. He had a 94 defensive grade. He had 3 defensive stops. He was targeted twice, allowed zero completions, and rather than allowing those completions, he turned those into 2 interceptions. So really cool story. Go Oaks Christian. Love to see that we are still making an impact in the college football landscape. Haven't really had anybody on, obviously, the Kayvon Thibodeau level, Zach Charbonnet, the way that we did back when I went to school, but still good to see, especially out of nowhere. It's not like I was looking for Carson to succeed, and all of a sudden, just looking him up, I'm like, oh shit, you actually went to, we are the similar alumni of the same high school, so love that for him. Now let's talk about the rest of the stock up group. Quinn Ewers bounced back. Super awesome. Ended up watching that game with you guys. If you guys want to watch the 4.5-hour stream, I pushed it a little bit too far. I should have ended it. I already started feeling like dead after the game, but we ended up blading a little bit into Ole Miss and Georgia as well, but ended up having a 4.5-hour stream, which was super awesome. Love that. You guys were awesome during the whole time, but Quinn Ewers had a good game, really good game. 19 completions, 27 throws, 333 yards, 5 touchdowns, 0 picks. The big time throw to turnover worthy ratio is mediocre, 2-1, but I ended up saying this. He ended up also having a 1 rush for 9 yards. Like, great performance statistically, but for me, what I weight the heaviest, because you might say, oh, why is Quinn Ewers not one of the all-stars of the week? I weight big-time throws far heavier than touchdowns, because if I'm going to be real, Quinn Ewers' touchdowns, especially like Matt Golden, I thought that those were actually relatively not NFL-level passes. Like, we're seeing C.J. Stroud, throwing picks, Jared Goff throwing picks. You think that Quinn Ewers is going to be like those passes that are not properly placed are going to be touchdowns? I don't know. But the fact is, Quinn Ewers, when he's at his best, is up there with the best of the class, if not the best of the class. The problem is the consistency is not there. People ask, is he a first-round pick? I say he is more of a third-round pick, because third round is where you take inconsistent potential at the quarterback position. So that's a big asterisk there, because I don't think Quinn can start right away, but he sure as hell has the talent to really develop, and that's why I did not kick him out of my top 10 quarterbacks, unlike someone that we are going to be talking about in the duds list. So, continuing on, we got JT Tuimoloau. He actually ended up being on PFF's Team of the Week, which is awesome. Technically, this is almost like a reference to Team of the Week. If you guys do want that, I can start it next year. I don't like starting stuff at the end of a year. We could do a litmus test, but let me know in the comment section if you guys would be down for that. But he got a 91 defensive grade, a 93 run defense grade, 4 pressures, and 3 stops. Obviously, key game from JT Tuimoloau, who's been having a really solid year. Someone who is now a my guy, which is insane, because he used to be the guy who I was notoriously against about a year or two ago. Then we have a Donovan Zirwaku, edge rusher out of Boston College. He's on this list damn near every single time he plays. I get to watch him this week versus SMU. I am super duper hyped for that. He had 6 pressures, 2 defensive stops, and a forced fumble. Great job by Donovan. Continuing on, we got Ethan Robinson, cornerback out of Minnesota. He ended up having a really solid game, 78 defensive grade. He had 2 defensive stops. He was targeted 5 times, allowed 2 receptions for 44 yards. But on those 3 other throws, he had an interception and 2 pass breakups. Excellent performance right there. I will allow 1 mistake here and there. He ended up having 3 very positive plays on the other side. Robert Longerbeam, I think that's how you say it. Cornerback out of Rutgers, had a really solid week as well. He was targeted 7 times, allowed 4 receptions for 48 yards, but on those 3 throws that were not completions, they were all 3 pass breakups. Excellent performance there. Rutgers is a really good factory for defensive talent. There were a lot of guys for Rutgers, including some linebackers that I didn't even get to include on this list, but there's a lot more than this. Mikael Kamara, mentioned him a little bit earlier. He ended up having 6 pressures and 2 defensive stops with an 84 defense grade versus Michigan. Bottom line, this dude's been rocking it out for the past couple weeks, and I'm super excited to get him graded as time goes on. John Saunders ended up having a good game as well for Ole Miss. He had a defensive stop. He had 3 catches on 6 targets. He allowed 24 yards, but he had an interception and 2 pass breakups. It feels like that's going to be a recurring theme, as these guys with interceptions and a couple pass breakups. Because guess what? The next person, R.J. Mickens, he ended up having a really solid week as well with a 72 defensive grade. He had a defensive stop. He was targeted 3 times, allowed 1 reception for 23 yards, and Also, say it with me, had an interception in 2 pass breakups. So good job right there for RJ. James Pierce, I mean, why are we surprised? Every single time he plays, he pretty much belongs on this list now. 79 defensive grades, 6 pressures, and 4 defensive stops. Just a well-rounded performance. And then Jalen Milroe, I almost didn't include him as a passer. He was pretty damn awful. I mean, awful in terms of a first-round quarterback for statistics. He had 18 throws with 12 completions for 109 yards. He had 1 big-time throw, 0 turnover-worthy plays, no touchdowns, no picks. But, I mean, again, if you're going to be trying to be taken seriously as a quarterback in the NFL, you do not want Alabama to be using you primarily as a rusher, because he had 13 rushes, so he had more rushes than completions for 185 yards and 4 touchdowns. So he had more touchdowns, more yards, and more basically impactful plays in terms of actually moving the ball with his feet than he did with his arm. He had 6 missed tackles forced as well, but simply put, 13 carries for 185 yards and 4 touchdowns got him on this list, and that's the only reason he's on it. Otherwise, if he did not have that rushing performance, he would actually be a dud of the week. Because, again, I've had issues with Jalen Milroe in terms of his ball placement. It's been absolutely atrocious, and I am starting to really worry about him because he's someone who I started trying to take extremely seriously. But when you cannot hit a target in stride consistently, I'm not going to take you seriously, because in the NFL, is he better than Dak Prescott as a passer? Hell no. Hate to say it. Might be better as a runner, but unless you're Lamar Jackson, who can do it both, not many times that we get to see that end up being empirically a more reliable option. Carson Beck is our all dud of the week, I guess we can call it. Just our legitimate dud of the week is Carson Beck. We do have a spoiler of a second one, but 32 throws, 21 completions, 186 yards, 0 touchdowns, and an interception. That isn't enough to be on the dud of the week, though. Simply put, that would just be on the stock down of the week. The problem is he had 0 big-time throws and 3 turnover-worthy plays, 4 carries for 19 yards, and 2 fumbles with no missed tackles forced. So I think that's just, he's been a consistent downward spiral. And it's someone who I still have some faith in, being that day 3 target down the line where, you could end up having a little bit of faith in what he can become. But does this dude need to redshirt again and or go back to school and transfer? Is that what we're going to have to say about Carson Beck? Is there not enough talent around him where he has 3 NFL level tight ends? He has legitimate, maybe not first round level wide receivers, but a good amount of them, where he has actually draftable offensive linemen everywhere, where he has top tier running back help. And, you might not like Trevor Etienne, but for college sake, he is a really, really good back. And then you also have Miles Frazier in there. So where else could he improve? Right now, the statistics is the only area around him that can improve. It's himself. So certainly worrisome about Carson Beck. Could easily say he might not even go drafted in this case, because there's a theory where I've been putting it out that the quarterback position is the worst position to draft if you don't know they're going to start on your team, because, well, there's a lot of guys who people thought could start who are probably best suited as backups. Why would you draft a backup that you don't really see can start? Because backup corners, backup wide receivers, backup linemen, all of them can really legitimately take workload off of the starter. You rarely ever see that for the quarterback position. So that's my little spiel there about Carson Beck. And again, I'm one of those who still has an inch of faith in him. Mikael Williams is next. On 37 reps, he had 0 pressures. He had only 1 stop, and he had a 57 defensive grade in a loss. I still think he'll go top 32 because people get enamored with the idea that a crazy athlete with long arms is going to be some superstar. And it's not that Mikael Williams can't play, but this is just a really shitty performance for him in a game where they needed him to step up. Carson Beck didn't step up. They needed him to step up. And Trevor Etienne could have been included in this. He was actually included in the rest of this list here, but not the one that you are seeing. Again, I have over 100 lines of guys who are winners and losers this week because I end up going and picking out all of them. Then I just basically make the biggest and the lowest, the best and the worst. You guys know the deal. So not many people were able to really elevate their game, and Mikael Williams was one of the guys who really needed to in this instance. It would have shown a lot of development with him as a prospect. So certainly brings up some questions there. David Van, starting out with a couple NC State guys. David Van and Aiden White are our start of our stock down group. David Van had 52 reps. He had 0 production, so 0 pressures, 0 stops, 0 forced fumbles as well. And he had a 55 defensive grade, so technically a worse performance than Mikael Williams, but far lower standards. For guys to be on stock down, you have to have stock to begin with. David Van, at least I'd expect him to do a little bit because David was someone who I really liked last year. Aiden White is next. He had a 55 defensive grade as well. He had 2 defensive stops, which is more than his defensive line counterpart above him, but he had 8 targets, 5 catches allowed for 94 yards and a touchdown. I had my concerns with him in terms of athleticism. Well, it doesn't look like he's like the lockdown player that some people thought he was at the start of the year. But again, we all kind of hope that guys like this could end up being special because wide receivers are not in rare supply, and corners that are really competent, especially the ones that can fill in for injury, those start getting a little bit more rare. So we all kind of want all these guys to succeed, but Aiden White hasn't really had the year that I'd expect from him. Then you got Bo Collins. Bo Collins is a guy who I really want to stand up for, but simply put, this dude's entire year, it started out well in my opinion, but this dude cannot catch a ball to save his life. He has a horrible drop rate of over 15%. And this past week, he had 4 targets, had 1 reception for 15 yards, but he had as many drops as he did receptions this week. So, just for someone who I'm still waiting on Notre Dame offensive tape, there's only 1 week so far, and that's the first week for me to truly grade on. It's a big concern. It's a big concern. He's someone who I'm kind of dying to drop, but you guys know that based on my board, I only show you complete transparency on the current grades that I have for players. And Bo Collins had a good week 1, and beyond that, he hasn't really been very reliable. Garrett Nussmeier is next. Garrett ended up having a pretty mediocre week, pretty poor week actually. He had 42 throws, 27 completions for 239 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks. 1 big time throw to 3 turnover worthy plays. So whenever that ratio is negative, most likely if they are an actual draftable prospect, I'll probably put him on here. He had 4 carries for 27 yards and a fumble as well. Just bottom line, for someone that people were starting to put as high as 10th overall, not a 10th overall performance. Oscar Delp. I mean, talk about an all-time bust of a player for college, right? This guy was supposed to be the next Brock Bowers. Massive roles. Like, there was a massive target share that just went straight to the NFL. Insane. Ladd McConkey, and you got Ladd McConkey, not even. Let's make sure that we understand that. Ladd McConkey. And I mean, you can't get a single target. Oscar Delp had 30 reps this game. Not a single target. Brock Bowers, Ladd McConkey, 80% of their pass offense to the NFL. You can't soak up 5 to 10% of that. It's ridiculous for someone that we all I had him as tight end 4 coming into the year. What the hell happened to Oscar Delp? It's gonna be something that we gotta study, and maybe it is Georgia that's just genuinely not using him properly, but I don't think so. There is target share for him to soak up, and other tight ends Lawson Lucky are doing a great job of being able to take advantage of it, and even they have some struggles, sure, but on a consistency basis, Oscar Delp has been the worst tight end on the roster of the top 3. So it does certainly make me scratch my head because it was supposed to be dude, you have the athletic talent and the experience even behind Brock Bowers. What the hell is going on? Ernest Green's next. He had 4 pressures allowed and a 33 pass blocking grade. I have him as a guard, so it doesn't really worry me too much. But again, there are people who have him, they had him as their top tackle coming into the year. You guys know I was an Ernest Green hater. Not a fan of the fact that, I'm right about that, but I did end up liking him more as a guard. I don't think that's someone that you should just write off. Jaden Roberts, someone who I really believed in. He had a 30 pass blocking grade, allowed 2 pressures this past week. This dude's just been horrible. Week after week, man. His pass blocking grade has just not been good. I don't know what's going on. I think he obviously needs to transfer to a school that develops their offensive tackles or guards at a better rate. I think this dude is built to be a tackle, and he's just stuck in a guard spot. But he's not going to earn tackle reps when, A, the 2 tackles on both sides are technically playing at a level that's better than he is as a guard. So if you're not playing that well as a guard, It's going to be very difficult to say I'm going to bench my starter and then put you over them. So you'd have to hope for an injury, and I'm obviously not going to be the one to hope for an injury. I think people who do that are genuine douchebags, but at the same time, I guess I can be sometimes, but not in that way. I digress. Continuing on, Will Campbell ended up allowing 3 pressures, had a 52 pass blocking grade this week. Bottom line, I ended up watching more and more of Will Campbell, and seeing how he struggles, I see that the struggles translating to the NFL arguably more than how he succeeds, and that's as a tackle. I see that moving to guard will mitigate a noticeable amount of the risk without limiting a lot of what he actually does really well. I think that he's going to be a pure guard in the NFL. I'm calling it now. I called it at the start of the year, ended up changing my mind, and then I'm going back on it. I'm going to stick to my original evaluation. That is, Will Campbell is a guard at the NFL. Jonah Coleman's next, one of my favorite running backs. I'm going to obviously have to study how he performed this week versus Penn State, because 11 carries for 24 yards, with 2 missed tackles forced and a reception on a target for 8 yards is simply not RB2 level, which is where he is at right now. Jalen Catalon, and ending off this video, is our final dud of the week. He had a 62 defensive grade, had a defensive stop on 7 targets. He only allowed 2 catches, but it's for 111 yards and a touchdown. And I think the long pass was like 60 or 67 yards. So both of those passes were relatively big plays that he let up. And, he's just somebody who has been on the positive side of this a lot. It's also good to be able to allow you guys to keep tabs on him in terms of the negative aspect. Ricky White did really well this week, though. So keep that in mind, just not necessarily a top 14 performance. But that's going to be the video. Thank you so much for watching. You guys know I love you. See you on the far side.